When my daughter was 3, she had one of those preschool teachers I still tell tales about, and you would think she was the original Mother Goose. One day at snack time, the teacher offers my kid a fruit, and my offspring immediately responds, "I hate that." The teacher says, "That's a very strong word, and it's hard to change your mind when you think in strong words." We say, "It's not my favorite." Mind blown. This wise woman had shifted my entire perspective. It's hard to change your mind when you think in strong words. And that is what we are going to tackle today. Remember the show Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood? He told kids when they saw something scary to look for the helpers. We have scary things going on in our backyard, but we also have those helpers Mr. Rogers told us to look for. Most recently, when he saw the need to be that helper, he and his family walked the talk by establishing the Together Stronger Community Fund. It's a vehicle to use education, conversation, and interaction to combat the root causes of bias. Welcome Brightway Insurance co-founder, philanthropist, OneJax Humanitarian Award winner, Community Optimist, and my friend, David Miller.
Oh, thank you, Susie. I think I like Community Optimist the best because it's so instructive. You know, it's not just a statement about what is, but what kind of should be if you're trying to actually move things forward. So thank you.
I agree. And I obviously think of that word when I think of you because every time I see you, for every problem, you have 2 solutions. Which is something I find to be so inspiring because we often come across those people who for every solution find 2 problems. So in your interactions with them, how is it that you are able to so eloquently get people to see your point of view?
Well, I don't know how eloquently. I think the focus is on the most helpful solutions. And sometimes, you know, I think most of the time we hear things and we just don't, one of the muscles we don't use enough is that questioning muscle. Like we hear stuff and we take it for granted that's what is. And I think when you start really just questioning and really saying, you know, like, is that the best? Is that, you know, the way we should think about it? I think it leads to so many other positive kind of outcomes. And at the end of the day, it's much more important to be asking the right questions than it is to be coming up with the wrong answer. Most of the time, people are good at solving problems. We're trained in our educational process to solve problems. But what we're not great at is asking the right questions. And so a lot of times people, you know, we get into this situation in our community where we're so divided and there's so much division. And it's because, quite frankly, people are all trying to answer the wrong question. You know, today we hear things about hate and, you know, who's the problem? You know, recently in Jacksonville, there's been a lot of anti-Semitism around. The Jews are the problem. And before, you know, the Jews recently, we heard it was blacks are the problem. And after 9/11, it was the Muslims were the problem. Who's the problem? And quite frankly, it's absolutely the wrong question. And if you're trying to answer the wrong question, you're going to get an answer that's just not very helpful. It's an answer that just divides us and doesn't help us grow and be better. When you think of the United States and you think of the things that we've done to be the world power and the most dominant, wonderful country, it is not the division that has gotten us anywhere positive. It's all of the things that have made us great. It is our diversity. It is the fact that it's a place of hope. It is a place where people come to work hard and achieve their dreams. It's a place where victims don't thrive, but survivors do. And I think when we focus on the right kind of questions, we're going to get ourselves to the right, to the place where we all really want to end up being.
I love that. It sounds like your philosophy is not you versus me, but you and me versus the problem, which ends up leading us to more question marks, because typically when people come in with exclamation points, what does that energy look like, right?
Yeah. You know, it was interesting. After this, I had a great conversation with Ken Burns, who did the documentary, The United States and the Holocaust. He's done the Civil War. He's just a brilliant person. And after about an hour and a half, we came to this point, and he said, you know, everything that we watch and that we experience in our society is us versus them today. You know, whether it's politics, whether it's you turn on CNN, it's us versus them, or you turn on Fox, it's us versus them. He goes, really? It's just us. And it was like, yeah, it's just us.
It's one planet.
It's one. I mean, we have so much more in common than we have different. We have similar goals, similar aspirations, similar fears. You know, we worry about our safety. We all do, whether you're in an uninvested area of town or one that is one that gets a lot of investment and benefits. People worry about that. The question isn't who's the problem. We're all part of the solution. People are not liabilities. They're not things we should wall off and manage. People are our assets. People need to be invested in, and everyone is part of the solution. And when we think of people that way in general, all kinds of good things happen. You know, you open up opportunities, your problems get smaller and your opportunities get bigger.
So you're a business leader, and if I'm a business owner and I'm looking at Jacksonville, one of the fastest growing cities in Florida, like you said, recently we've had some unfortunate incidences here. I'm deciding I want to move my business and convince my employees to transplant their families and put their kids in schools here. What do I see first? Where there is darkness, people shine their light, or where there is light, people come to overshadow it with darkness?
Well, I would say that Jacksonville's a unique kind of place. We're at a size where Jacksonville matters, but we're not so big that great people can't come here and absolutely make a huge difference. And that's what's really special to me, is that if you're someone who really sees the world as your oyster and you see potential in different places, there's no place better than Jacksonville. There is an inclusive climate. There are people who work together to lift each other up. There are all kinds of opportunities for people to get involved and truly make a difference, whether it's, you know, in the not-for-profit world or the business community. It's a very loving and supportive kind of environment. And quite frankly, it's one where a great history of people overcoming adversity and working together to do that.
You recently said, my family is fiercely devoted to the greater Jacksonville community, and we see this as an opportunity to show each other and the world that Jacksonville is better than the rogue comments of a misguided few. What compelled you to make a public statement when so few people have been making public statements? Well,
there's no question that this, in my heart, and as I talk to other community leaders and business leaders of all shapes and backgrounds, everyone says the same thing, that this is a loving, inclusive community. The fact is, if we don't do something about it, if we don't speak up, then we're ceding that to basically some unattached individuals who just have a distorted view of what reality is. And this is a place we love. Every day that goes on, I'm reminded by when I see friends all over town. I see people who I've known in different places, new friends, old friends, everyone really working to make this place better. There is no way I'm going to let it happen, and so many other people, we're just not going to let it happen, where those forces of darkness end up defining us. They will not define us. But what we've got to do is there are things that we have to be intentional about. We can't take for granted. We can't take for granted our voice. And when we see things like this, we can't just allow them to just happen and go unanswered. We have to speak up. And whether it's addressed at us or our group or that sort of thing, or some other group, really doesn't matter. If it's not consistent with Jacksonville values, which are these values of support, belief that our diversity is a strengthening force, and the idea that if we're going to achieve our potential as a community, we've got to have individuals reach their personal potential. If people are touting a vision that is different than that, we've got to speak up, and we've got to connect with each other. You know, the stronger we, if we're going to be our strongest as a community, it's because we're going to work together at championing all kinds of successes and battling these challenges together.
So help me and my listeners narrow our focus so we can hone in on the opportunities to create change without being distracted by the broad, sometimes disheartening views. Can you help me to look in that direction, my optimist friends?
Sure. It's neat. So many of my I have a diverse group of friends and people who are, lead a couple of our universities, several of our universities, FSCJ, JU, University of North Florida, people who work in not-for-profit areas within those, people who are in the business community, and whether it's at the Chamber of Commerce, the Civic Council, whether they're people who lead some of our largest businesses, had a great opportunity recently when we were faced with the hate that was projected on the stadium and on overpasses and things like that. What they didn't realize, the people who are doing that, is they gave us a wonderful opportunity. And the opportunity they gave us is, one, to speak up, one, to build a core and a rallying message that is one of hope, one of working together. In fact, with an initial donation to the Together Strong Fund, we had some of the largest and most respected businesses and employers in Jacksonville say, you know what, that kind of hate doesn't represent who we are. It doesn't represent this community. So you have companies like ViStar Credit Union, Florida Blue, the Jacksonville Jaguars, Haskell, CSX, the founders of Fanatics, all donating $100,000 each, and almost immediately to say to these people who are going to quickly spout out hate, that doesn't represent us. And from that point, you then have some of the most respected not-for-profit organizations immediately jump in and say, we're going to work together on this. And we're not going to just immediately come up with a quick a soundbite, but we're going to really commit to doing this work. So you had the Community Foundation of Northeast Florida. They have over $600 million in assets. You have them leading. You have the United Way of Northeast Florida leading. You have 90 Forward, an amazing group, leading. You have the Jewish Federation leading. The JU Public Policy Institute involved in leading, as well as OneJax, which is affiliated with the University of North Florida. So you have these stakeholders, along with some of the largest employers in Jacksonville, really working together to say, let's first study the issue. We want to understand it. We know that the final answer is going to involve education. It's going to involve people interacting more together. It's going to involve more connectivity. But at the end of the day, it's really going to be about acceptance and understanding and recognition that we're going to control the dialogue. We're not going to allow someone hiding behind a projector to control our message.
True story. It sounds to me like a $1 million donation from the Miller families started the trend from a vision board to an action plan. And then more than $500,000 later, you're at over $1.6 million. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing in such a short period of time.
It's so impactful. And I think what impresses me the most is that you and I have often spoken about interacting through different communities. And that is a key to how we can lift up Jacksonville collectively. Can you talk a little bit about your involvement with different communities and how you've seen personally that impact grow?
Yeah, we started in the beginning of the conversation, we were talking about asking the right question. And when you ask the right question, how empowering that can be. And so here's a perfect example. Some groups, will say, we shouldn't talk about the Black community because it leaves out the Hispanic community, and we shouldn't talk about the Jewish community because they're, they don't face the same challenges as the Black community does, or the LGBT community. Again, wrong questions. Instead, what we want to say is, bias of all kinds comes from the same place. And it really is not about who's discriminated differently, who's discriminated against, worse. That trying to answer that question is a distraction. Instead, what we need to focus on is how we bring us all together around this idea that we're all our brother's keeper. And how can we start addressing shared goals and shared challenges and shared concerns? How do we do that together? The more we focus on doing that, rather than doing things that divide us, the better we're going to be. You cannot heal a scab by scratching it, right?
Such a good analogy. Say that again. You can't heal
a scab by scratching it. And so, we're going to get all this pain out. We're just going to get it out. We're going to just keep beating ourselves down. Stop. We've got to stop. Just stop doing that. Instead, what we can focus on is dealing with what do we have in common? We all want our kids to reach their potential. We want schools that educate our kids and are going to challenge them, are going to help them be critical thinkers and be prepared for the jobs of tomorrow, not the industrial area of the 1900s, but what we need to do. And so, what are the kind of things we want to expose our kids to that are going to help build them and inspire them? Like, those are shared. How are we going to deal with challenges of crime? Are we going to do it by walling off communities and continuing to not invest in them? We've done that for 50 years here in Jacksonville. How's that worked for us? It hasn't worked, but in places, what we know is that when we invest in these communities and invest in people and help people have opportunity. I'm not a big proponent that everyone should end up, we should focus on equal outcomes. I think we need to focus on equal opportunity, because what happens when everyone has a fair shake, at the end of the day, those who work hardest win. And that is the American dream. When you start out from the place, what are the things that really make America great? It's that this is a place where you can be born in one status and you can rise to be anyone you want. But to do that, to really achieve the American dream and for there to be a true American dream, you've got to have equal opportunity.
So it sounds to me like equity is the takeaway, not necessarily equality. And that's something that people sometimes use interchangeably, but they're not the same thing, right? What is good for me may not necessarily be the same good for you. If you give me a pound of sugar, but I'm diabetic,
right,
I've got a problem. So when we look at the communities around us and we look at the generations that are coming up after us, right? Because you're like me, a Gen Xer, and we want to fix problems right away. We want to expedite the solutions. If you could pick two things that keep you up at night, what are those two things that you want to address?
Well, one is, I think, blind following. When you've got a situation in a community where people who just are so quick to just follow, and they don't have the confidence in their own thinking and their own strength to follow their gut and follow what they know is right. That's a challenge, and I think it's something we have to. You deal with individually. We all deal with that, right? We all have these fears of we're way harder on ourselves than we ever should be. And so what happens is people don't always really spend the time and think about what is the right thing and then commit to doing it. They just, we live our life a lot of times in this land of loosey-goosey. It's kind of, it's convenient, it's someone else's problem, it's this and that.
Like cruise control.
cruise. Yeah, great way
Everyone's
to
driving a Tesla now.
Yeah. And so I think one of the things is we just got to realize that we need to time, we can't make more of it. And every minute in our life is precious. So, stand up for what's right and question the things that are, that you hear. A lot of political slogans are just slogans. They make good sound bites, but they're not necessarily good policy. And at the end of the day, you can support whoever you want to support. But if you really do support someone, you've got to love them enough to tell them that sometimes their ideas are wrong. And the other guy who you may not support, they may have an idea that's a better idea. And as citizens, our job is sacred. And we've got to support our leaders in a way by telling them what they need to hear. We can't just follow bad ideas. If, good people can have bad ideas. And so we just have to recognize that. Our job as citizens is to think, and when we know something in our heart and in our gut is right, we stand up for it. And when something's not right, we got to say it's just not right.
See something, say something. I'm a New Yorker. All over those subways, you see the signs. And it's funny because I got here about 8 years ago. My husband got a job offer and he says to me, we're going to Jacksonville. And I tell him, I don't do vills. I don't do vills and I don't do burgs. So you're going to commute. But here I came, and it was the first place that I ever saw a Confederate flag, any signs of racism or anti-Semitism. And I've been to countries with concentration camps. However, this was the first place that I saw grassroots efforts at activism where I met people like you who put their walk where their talk is. And it was so impressive to me because just like you said, in Jacksonville, when something was seen and something was said, legislation was very quickly enacted. Right?
Yeah. I mean, you look at that, and I think that's one of the misnomers too. People think that I really don't have a say. And the fact is, we do have a say. It's amazing how quickly, when people get mobilized, and you don't need to build an army. It's you could be tremendously more impactful than you ever thought. And it's a great feeling. I'm sure anyone who's listening knows times when you end up trying and you end up doing something and it benefits someone else. How that feels afterwards. How you just, wow, that was awesome. And imagine that same feeling of working together with a number of people around really just exercising your freedoms. Living an American experience where we appreciate and value our voice, we use our voice, we support each other, we help others achieving their potential, and we work together, we roll up our sleeves, and we accomplish something that's really special. I saw it firsthand with the Emerald Trail here in Jacksonville, being able to galvanize community support around an idea that was just an idea, and it was amazing that getting some business leaders and community activists together around this fantastic idea that has all these positive benefits that come from it in all kinds of different ways. Can you expand on that for somebody
who isn't familiar with the Emerald Trail?
Yeah, so the Emerald Trail is going to be a 32-mile green beltway that's going to connect all these different communities around the heart of Jacksonville. So like San Marco, Riverside, Avondale, Five Points, Brooklyn, La Villa, Springfield, both of the river walks, the North Bank, the South Bank Riverwalk, the different bridges that are now pedestrian bridges. All of these are going to be connected with this trail that is going to allow for a whole new amenity that Jacksonville has. We're very familiar. We benefit from the ocean. We benefit from the intercoastal and the river. Those are tremendous amenities, and everyone recognizes it's valuable. People are like, well, they're not building any more rivers, or they're not making any more oceanfront.
Right.
And that's true. But what we are doing is creating this new 32-mile amenity that all kinds of local developers are going to develop around, creating cafes, creating the ability to now access newly daylighted creeks like McCoy and Hogan Creek.
Oh, wow.
Which are going to create this wonderful amenity where people can kayak and canoe and paddle boat up and down.
So it makes Jacksonville a vacation destination.
Yeah, I think the answer is yes, and it's great for people who want to be here, but it's also great for people who live here. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not a zero-sum game. You know, we can attract other people as well as investing in the kind of jobs we want, as well as creating a climate that anyone who wants to work in this post-pandemic kind of world are going to be able to benefit from. So it's really, really wonderful. And so that is an idea and an example of being able to take our collective dollars, invest in an amenity that's going to pay multiple dividends. That's a wonderful use of government. And it's the kind of thing that makes people feel proud and makes them have confidence. And we need more of that.
So like I tell people, if you have a problem, my friend David has 2 solutions for it. The first one and the contingency plan in case there's a slip up. David, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your optimism with us.
I'm so grateful. Thank you.
It's time for our honorable mention. Mensch is the Yiddish word for a person of integrity and honor with a sense of what is right and responsible. This week's honorable mensch is Stacy Goldring, producer of Traces, Voices of the Second Generation, and founder of Searching for Identity. Curating history and presenting it in a way that is educational and riveting is not an easy feat. In her film Traces and in the writing workshop where she holds space for pain, process, and projection, Stacy ensures that not only are the stories never forgotten, but that generational trauma is never dismissed. Where there is evil, there is resilience. Stacy will be honored by OneJax on May 4th at their annual Humanitarian Award event. You can find out more about Stacy and her work at www.tracesfilm.com.